fourth edict already burns for your word. Endless, ravaging pain. Improbable, but inconsequential. Must. We that are one. She of stolen cruelty. The hive shall spill forth like a mouth. We that fail.
Go forth and grow.
Protect the ritual. Let Kriok bid the darkness. Wildwood's power is mine! Aid me! Traveler's pain. The end of meaning is nigh! So long as you know me, I will always exist. The doom at the door. You purify. Face me. Starfire.
Hey, Mason here. Welcome to the final build guide for Corrupting Cry Rolling Slab Warbringer for patch 0.2, Dawn of the Hunt. And in this build guide, my plan is to cover absolutely everything you need to know about this build, how to progress this build from leveling all the way to tier 4 bosses, what content this build specializes in and what content this build cannot do, as well as any commonly encountered issues that you may have on your journey when progressing this build. In the background footage, you can see me tanking Arbiter's wipe attacks. This was just a funny experiment I did in tier 0 Arbiter, but it showcases the tankiness of the build for bossing, because if you make mistakes, there's a chance that you won't get punished. Alright, so let's start with the basics. How does this build solve Clay? In patch 1.0, a YouTuber known as Skadoosh made a video about Corrupting Cry Warbringer, with the idea of using Sesame Cry with Corrupting Cry support. and this would kill mobs. And once mobs die, it uses the Warbringer Corpse Explosion Ascendancy for warcries, which makes their corpse explode, killing the next mob, and then this basically has chain proliferating clear. This build is based on that fundamental interaction. It uses Corrupting Cry linked with Sesame Cry, so Sesame Cry is your main damaging skill, and it uses that with the Warbringer nodes for warcries to have extremely good clear, allowing it to do all mapping content. I get commonly asked the question of, because you're using totems for single target, why don't you use totems for clear as well? And personally, melee totems, when they attack, they have a delay, like a wind up for them. And this is especially obvious on clearing skills such as Sunder when linked with Upheaval, because Upheaval gives it less attack speed. And you place the totem, and it takes like 1 second or 2 seconds for the totem to actually slam and do damage clearing. Personally, I felt that this clear was not as good as the Corrupting Cry setup with Corpse Explosions. And in my opinion, after testing this with totems for quite a while, I have come to the conclusion that I believe Corrupting Cry is still the best way to clear on this Ascendancy. And I will just mention all credits to Skadoosh for coming up with this build concept in patch 0.1. I've only taken this build concept and refined it and basically pushed it as far as I can for this patch, as well as tested it on different Ascendancies for the previous patch. So this build has undergone many changes due to the kind of vast nature of patch 0.2, especially it's nerfing so much staff. But the key thing I want to highlight about the change in regards to clear is that your Sesame Cry is actually doing a lot more of the damage than your Corrupting Blood debuff from Corrupting Cry. And this is why you should have a high level Sesame Cry for this patch. Now that I've covered how the build clears, I'm going to talk a little bit about the issues. The key issue you will encounter is when mobs have an extremely large amount of HP, for example 100% increased monster life maps with Delirium on them, and this will result in it being difficult to start the chain of corpse explosions by killing the first mob. The way you solve this issue is 1. You want a very high level Sesame Cry gem. 2. You want to have as much increased damage as you can. Generally, this is from jewels in the early game. And later, Deepest Towers, low life damage, those nodes on the tree, will boost damage with Sesame Cry at close range. And those two are the primary methods of solving this issue. Delirious maps can be an issue because they make you deal less damage against mobs, but with those solutions, I have not had any issues with clearing difficult maps. In the background footage, you can see that I'm clearing Delirious Breaches without any issues at all, and that's because Breach mobs drop a corpse when they die. Delirious mobs have a key issue where they do not drop corpses, and this can make Simulacrum very difficult without significant changes to the build, and personally I would not recommend Simulacrum on this build. If you want a Simulacrum farmer that specializes in only Simulacrums, which is not very good at the moment because nothing from there is valuable, I would not recommend this build in particular. Despite me not recommending the build for Simulacrum, Skadoosh has a video of him clearing tier 4 Simulacrums with this build in the previous patch, and if you make changes similar to what he did, you should be able to clear Simulacrum without any issues. Okay, so now that I've covered how this build does its clear, this section will cover how this build outputs its single target damage. The primary source of single target damage for this build is with the use of Ancestral Warrior Totem. This totem skill allows you to socket any mace skill into it, and the totem has these little guys that come out of it, and they will use the mace skill that is socketed in. The totems use their own mace, meaning that none of the scaling vectors on your mace actually matter, except melee skill gems, skill speed, as well as increased stun build-up. Because this build primarily outputs physical damage, lines such as increased elemental damage from attacks would not affect that because you're doing phys damage. But if you were doing elemental, these would affect totem damage. Because of the new introduction to the armor break debuff that makes it so that armor broken mobs take 20% increased physical damage, I don't see any reason to use Avatar of Fire to convert physical damage to elemental damage, which would then open up the scaling vectors of increased elemental damage from attacks on your maces to increase your totem damage further. Generally, when a build is created, it will have 3 main damage scaling vectors. The first one will be getting increased attack speed or increased cast speed. The second one will be getting percentage increased damage, whether this is like increased lightning damage, increased elemental damage, increased fizz damage. And the last one will be getting flat damage, so added number X to Y fizz damage to attacks, this kind of stuff. This build uses all 3 scaling vectors. The way it gets its added fizz flat damage is through the Totem gem itself. With a high level Totem gem, the Totem says it uses its own mace and it has a damage range on it. You basically want to maximize this Totem gem level with the use of 2 maces and Giant's Blood with +7 on both of them for melee skill gems, as well as +3 on your amulet and +2 on your gloves. This allows you to get to level 39 Totem, and this results in a very high amount of base physical flat damage that you can work with. Now that the build has a substantial amount of flat damage to work with, the next scaling vector is increased damage. With the introduction of a new unique helmet called the Deepest Tower, the build uses the low life nodes in the warrior area to gain an insane amount of increased damage, primarily all from this helmet and those nodes on the tree, which then boosts this flat damage to astronomical amounts, rivaling damage from patch 0.1. Finally, with the introduction of the new runes of alacrity that give increased skill speed, this skill speed actually affects your totems, and this now gives another method to gain a little bit more damage through scaling skill speed with 4 of these runes. In my particular setup, I have decided to focus more on single target damage, and the way I have done this is through an all damage shocks companion to apply shock, as well as using Voltaic Mark on cast on block. Now I'm going to talk about the key issue that you may encounter when you're playing this build on bossing. Because that you are scaling melee skill gems on your everything, you end up having an extremely high level totem, and it ends up costing a ridiculous amount of mana, in this case life because you're playing blood magic. The key issue that you may have is that because you are using a weapon swap for totem damage, when you are placing your totems, you do not have a shield on. In this clip, you'll see a very good example of what will happen if your shield is not up when you get hit, and it will result in you likely dying. I'm replaying this clip right now in slow motion, but you can see that when he actually hits me, I'm already at 40% HP because I've been placing totems and it's costing me a lot of life. This particular boss had monsters have 50% increased attack and cast speed, and that's what caught me off guard because I placed my totems too late. In this Olroth clip, I'll show you how you can get around these issues. The first one, ironically, is learning boss attacks. Certain boss attacks have very large wind-ups or very large end lag, and that will allow you to get your totems off, all 3 of them. In the second here, you see Olroth throw his sword right there, and I place 2 totems, and then I health pot. The other one here is that when Olroth is channeling his sword to the sky like that, it's a very long animation, and you can place your totem in that animation. This is different for every single boss, because obviously every single boss has their own attacks, but it's something that you come and you learn with experience. The next method of getting around this is placing a totem and then immediately swapping back to your shield. The way I do this is I will place my totem and then I'll swap to Seismic Cry right here, you can see. In this particular example, I swapped back by using Infernal Cry to gain rage, but that is the primary 2 methods that you can use to get around this issue. There are setups that have more HP, such as using Kaom's Heart, but you will lose single target boss DPS if you go with those setups. Personally, I like to kill the boss as fast as possible, because I like seeing huge damage numbers, and so that's how I'm getting around these issues. As a final conclusion for the single target section, this build is all content viable except simulacrums, where you will need to make significant changes to make it viable. The single target damage is extremely good, and it will allow you to do all the bosses without any issues, as well as being very tanky due to having Total Charm. Now that I've given a build overview for both single target and clear, I'm going to talk a little bit about the skill gems. Your primary skill gem, as mentioned before, is Seismic Cry. This skill does a warcry, it knocks back enemies, it does a bit of damage. It mentions here that the skill will go on cooldown, but it doesn't actually matter because you're playing Warbringer, and Warbringer ignores warcry cooldowns. Seismic Cry is linked with Corrupting Cry to give it a bit more damage. It's linked with Swift Affliction to boost Corrupting Cry damage, Brutality to boost both Seismic Cry and Corrupting Cry damage, and it's linked with Mobility for quality of life and Magnified Effect to make it bigger. This is what Seismic Cry looks like when you're using it, and you can spam it due to having the Warbringer Ascendancy, and these are the damage that I'm getting from my Seismic Cry. Make sure that this is only used with weapon set 1, which is your weapon set that is running a scepter and a shield. Your main single target DPS, as mentioned before, is Ancestral Warrior Totem. Ancestral Warrior Totem is linked with Rolling Slam, and this Rolling Slam is a level 21 to get it to level 40. Conk Effect, because it's a more damage multiplier. Heavy Swing, also more damage multiplier. Execute, it's a more damage multiplier with the Deepest Tower helmet. And Heft, which gives it more maximum physical damage. My Rolling Slam, you can see the damage numbers here. The first hit does 80,000 damage. The second hit does 160,000 damage. This is just base without any debuffs on the boss. You remember you have 3 of these guys, and they attack every 2.3 seconds. The next skill choice is Infernal Cry. This is your main rage generation. Infernal Cry is linked with Raging Cry for rage, Dazing Cry because there's nothing else really good to link, and Dazing Cry makes certain mobs get stunned faster, Premediation, which I'll explain when I get to Shield Charge, as well as Murderous Intent. Murderous Intent is optional, Premediation helps, but is also optional, so you can actually leave this on a 2-link, but because 3 links are very cheap, I recommend you just chuck in Premediation and skip out on Murderous Intent. Infernal Cry actually does not do much in terms of damage. Its entire purpose is to be spammed by holding whatever the key it is on bosses to get up to 30 rage and sustain 30 rage. Because of the Warbringer Ascendancy node, you're ignoring cooldowns, which means that you can have 100% rage uptime with this build, which is 30% more damage. The next skill I'm going to talk about is some new tech that I've been using, which is the Armor Breaker tech. This is an Ancestral Warrior Totem that is as low level as possible, in this case level 13, and the reason why is to reduce the mana cost of it. It is linked with Armor Breaker that is qualitied, it is linked with Impale, Overabundance, and Font of Blood. The key here is the interaction with Overabundance and an extra support totem gem. When I have 3 totems up, you can see here I have 3 totems up that I got by pressing this one, which is the Rolling Slam one. I can actually place an extra totem, which is the Armor Breaker totem. Overabundance allows you to not override your previous totem, which allows you to have 4 total totems, so you can have a totem that is designed only for armor breaking. Because placing this totem costs life, I have Font of Blood on it, which means that this Font of Blood will have good uptime, and this results in me having a very high amount of regen. For context, without anything, I have 250 regen. When I have 3 totems down, I'm still at 250, but when I place the Armor Breaker totem, I'm at 280 regen. You can see it's actually ramping when I go very close. I go up to 400 regen when I have the Armor Breaker totem up. This is primarily how you get your regen, and you want to make sure that you place this totem very close to the boss because Armor Breaker has a very short range. And you also want to be close to the boss anyways. For the deepest tower, enemies in your presence count as having low life. The next skill I'm going to talk about is Shield Charge. Shield Charge ends up being your primary way to kill rares in maps. My Shield Charge is level 19 with max quality for increased cooldown so I can go faster, Ingenuity for more uses to go faster in maps, Momentum for more damage, Close Combat for more damage, and Martial Tempo because it makes the ramp up, like the part where you're at the animation before you actually Shield Charge, faster and makes it feel a lot nicer when you're going around maps. You use this to travel between packs as fast as you can. And on rare mobs, you will pop Infernal Cry because Infernal Cry gives you empowered attacks gain a bunch of damage, as well as this quality that gives a shit ton of damage, in combination with Premediation support, and it buffs Shield Charge because Shield Charge is a melee attack, and this results in your Shield Charge hitting extremely hard, allowing you to generally one-shot or two-shot rares. This means when you're mapping, you don't need to go to the annoyance of placing your totems for most rares, unless it's an extremely tanky rare that you Shield Charge and you're not doing much damage to it, you will place your totem and swap back, and your totem will one-shot it. It's more or less just quality of life. It allows you to map a bit faster, especially in Breach, when you can pop, like use Shield Charge to pop the white mobs, and then you can use your Sesame Cry to start the corpse explosions, which then wipes the Breach. In terms of auras, Warrior does not have very many good auras, but the ones that I used on this build are 1. Overwhelming Presence to reduce the stun threshold of mobs. Because of the way Rolling Slam works, on the second slam it says 50% more damage against heavily stunned enemies. It means that you want to have the enemy heavily stunned as soon as possible, and Overwhelming Presence helps with that. It is linked with Vitality and Herbalism, and it is used in both Weapon Set 1 and Weapon Set 2. The next aura I'm using, you'll see that it's actually not active at the moment, is Berserk. Berserk says it increases the effect of rage by up to, I think it's 59%, and you have 30 rage, each rage gives you 1% attack damage, so around an extra 50% will be around extra 16%, 15% more attack damage. It's more damage against bosses. The key thing to note is that Berserk is only used in Weapon Set 2. This is because totems actually snapshot. When I place my totem, you can see my Berserk is active, and then it's costing my Spirit here, and then when I swap back, you can see that it's not active, but I have done testing, and totems will gain the damage given by Berserk, even though Berserk is not active, because they snapshot with whatever you're placing at the moment. So whatever gear you have on and whatever skills you have on when you place. That's why Berserk is only in Weapon Set 2. The one thing I want to mention is that in Weapon Set 2 you don't have a Scepter, so you only have 100 spirit, which is the standard for all characters, meaning that you need to make sure that both Overwhelming Presence and Berserk can be active in your weapon set 2, which means that you can't have too many of these support gems for auras in here because these cost spirit. You can see here I have 120 and 115, and it results in me having 5 spirit left. That's the discussion regarding Berserk, just make sure it's on weapon set 2. The next aura is Blasphemy with Enfeeble. Because you have a lot of spirit from having a scepter, there's not really anything to use your auras on in terms of what in the warrior side of the tree. So personally, I've gone with Blasphemy with Enfeeble to give a tiny bit of damage, like reduction on the mobs, and it just helps a tiny bit. It mentions here that uniques deal 12% less damage, but Blasphemy itself has like reduced curse effect. So the end result is like around 6 to 7% less damage taken. It makes you a tiny bit more tanky. There's not much else to put on it. It also opens up 2 support gems for auras that you want to have on. In particular, for supports, you won't have Enfeeble and Qualityed. You won't have Ritualistic Curse. You want to have, I have Cannibalism here, and I have Warm Blooded. And that's because I have a lot of spirit from my scepter. You can see here 140. And the final thing is a companion. This companion has all damage shocks, and I also re-rolled it to have Temporal Bubble. Currently, the best way to farm companions is in Act 6 it would be, in the Jungle Ruin Zone. There is a waypoint that will always guarantee a rare beast that you can basically constantly re-roll at. You will find this waypoint, and then you will reset at checkpoint every time you see the beast, and it's not what you want. You also don't want to kill the beast, because if you kill the beast, it won't be reset when you reset the checkpoint. So all you're doing is you're just fishing for one with all damage shocks and anything relevant. I have gone with Temporal Bubble. I've noticed that Temporal Bubble is pretty nice, but you can go with Haste Aura, you can go with extra physical damage, you can go with Hinder Aura, you can go with Shroud Walker. You can basically go with anything you want. If you don't want to spend too much time, just fish for all damage shocks. If you want to spend more time, you can fish for Haste Aura. I think that's the best one. Temporal Bubble is also extremely good. This mob is supported by Overcharge. Because it always shocks on every auto attack, doesn't matter like how much damage it actually does with the basic attacks that it does. This will increase the shock from 20% to 30%, increasing your boss damage. It says that shocks are reflected back to you, but it's actually reflected back to the mob, and we don't actually care. The mob can die as soon as it applies shock. The next one I have here is Lasting Shock. The less chance to shock doesn't matter because everything from this mob shocks, so it's just free 100% increased shock duration. And this helps because the mob will die as it doesn't have much HP because it's very low level. You can see here, I'm not sure if it actually says, yep, 1500 HP. It basically has no HP at all, and no res at all. And that's why I have Last Gasp on this mob. This thing will allow the companion to stay alive for an extra 4 seconds when it goes to 0 HP. And basically, the end result is that it reduces your respawn cooldown from 7 seconds, which is the default, to around like 3 seconds in reality. So that covers what the skills are for the final version of this build. But I'll talk a little bit about other options for auras that you can use in particular. There's 2 main ones that I've noticed, or 3. First one is Time of Need. Time of Need makes it so that you, every X seconds, 10 seconds, you will restore some HP, you will remove curses and ailments. When this is supported with fast forward support, which makes it have a less duration, you can get this around 7 seconds or so. Personally, I did not find this very useful because 600 HP is like, it's 1/5 of my HP, and I get around 400 regen, so it's around like 1 to 2 seconds of regen. So I did not find this very significant in my testing. The next one is Scavenged Plating. Scavenged Plating is a pretty good aura because it gives you a bunch of armor. But personally, because my chest piece is actually not that good in terms of how much armor it gives me, I have found Scavenged Plating to be very useless. My personal armor amount on my character is only 2000 armor. Scavenged Plating will increase it to 3000 armor. It's basically not much at all. With the change that I have made, and I'm now using an Armor Breaker Totem, you can't actually proc Scavenged Plating anymore in maps, because previously, the setup was using this node right here, which makes it so that when you stun an enemy, it breaks their armor, and that would allow you to proc on just random mobs when you're running around and warcrying. Because of that's no longer the case and I'm using Armor Breaker, I cannot recommend you use Scavenged Plating on this build, unless you take that notable I just showed before. The final one is Warbanner. Warbanner says, it grants 5% more attack damage, and it has increased aura magnitude per valor. This results in around 50% more attack damage, which is a lot. It's a lot of attack damage. But the main issue with this is that you have to actually kill mobs to get the banner, or you wait around on the boss for the banner to ramp up. Like, it takes a while, and I can't really recommend this on bosses because for majority of the bosses, you won't have a chance to kind of ramp up the war banner to have the stacks ready. It requires 50 stacks, and the only boss I know that you can actually do this on is Xesht and Olroth if you do the expedition before. But for stuff like King of the Mist, you can't really ramp up war banner in prep, and for Arbiter, you also can't do that. That's why I'm not running war banner. I have tested it before. It does give you a lot of damage. If you do want to run it, you want to place the war banner when the boss gets heavy stunned, because that's where most of your burst is, and it should give you an astronomical amount of like burst. You should be able to like probably do like, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 20 mil damage in one heavy stun cycle. But again, I've already mentioned the reasons why I'm not taking this, and I personally don't have this on my skill setup. This build is pretty starved for sockets. So if you do have extra sockets, you will want to, maybe like you have a ring that gives you an extra socket, you can always experiment with one of those gems, but you have to remove some of the aura supports because they're consuming a bunch of spirit. And one more thing I forgot to mention is cast on block. There's currently a bug with cast on block where if you get enough int to activate it, you can put the gems into it, and then you can drop that amount of int and it will still work. The way I personally do this is I have a random ring that has some int on it. I will equip this ring, and then I will respec. Sorry, wrong one. I will respec 2 of these nodes. So currently they're both on int, but what I would actually do is I'll respec them over to strength because I don't actually need them.
Speak.
I should do that. This is my main setup. I'll respec these to int, and then I will put in sockets into my custom block, and then I will revert this back to strength, and I'll take off the ring and put on my normal ring, which is this one here.
I've changed.
There's a few options of what you can have in custom block. The primary one used in last patch was Orb of Storms. Orb of Storms with Font of Rage with Font of Blood. That were the 3 key things, and persistence. This is a good solution to get the regen from Font of Blood, but because I'm placing a Armor Breaker Totem now, and I have an extra socket, I'm putting Font of Blood in this. And it also makes it a bit better because after you place your totems, you want your regen, because obviously it's costing you the most amount of life to place your totems. And you will always place this totem last, so that this one will always be out when you're at the lowest amount of HP, and that results in you getting the regen when you need it the most. Because with Orb of Storms, you actually have to take damage to get the regen, and that's inconsistent. For example, if you take damage when you're placing your totems, you would die, like I showed in the previous clip earlier. That's why I'm not using Orb of Storms. The other solution is the new Blood Mark. It says that it marks a target, they suffer heavy stun based on blood loss. If they've suffered enough blood loss, the mark will explode. It has mentioned here that blood loss does work for all fizz damage over time, which means that Corrupting Cry will work on this. But from my personal testing, it does not do enough. It's not significant enough. My Corrupting Cry versus my totem damage, it's nothing, which means that the blood loss is basically non-existent, which means that I personally felt this was quite useless. There is a new support gem that says aggravates targets. This one right here. Supported skills aggravate bleeding on hitting heavily stunned enemies. You will want to run Bloodhound Mark with this on it, because Bloodhound Mark mentions that it explodes when heavy stunned, which means that this is guaranteed to aggravate bleed, and because of the skill tree, I have these 3 bleed nodes here, which gives around 40% chance to bleed, with all 3 totems, and because they attack twice. But personally, I've done some testing, I don't think it's significant enough, and I have settled on Voltaic Mark, sorry. So you can see in my current setup, I have a Voltaic Mark. It says, the only thing that matters here is the increased shock effect on marked target. When a boss hits me, it will apply the shock effect, and this will result in you doing more damage against the target. The supports you want will be persistence, will be single out. There's actually no reason to have this. You actually don't need this, but I just put it in because there's nothing else better. And impetus for more energy. You can run the one that makes it so that skills refund energy cost, the support. It's personal preference. But yeah, that should cover all my skill gems. And I will just remind you again that it says I can't use this, but there is a bug where if you put the gems in and you swap, like you lose the int, this will still work against bosses. Right, so now that I've covered the skill gems, I'm going to talk a little bit about the passive tree. Because of the new weapon swap, this allows us to put a lot of our totem single target nodes that aren't relevant to the Corrupting Cry setup on our second weapon swap. Currently, For context, weapon swap 1 is Scepter and Shield, weapon swap 2 is the 2 Totem Maces, the plus 7 melee skill gem maces. If you take a look at my skill tree, I'll start at the top here. So these nodes here are all on weapon set 1 with the shield, because you can't block when you don't have a shield, so there's no point of putting them on weapon set 2. And the key is that this node right here gives me a lot of damage, increased damage, that helps my Sesame Cry. This one here also gives a ton of block. We're pathing up here because we want to grab Blood Magic, and I will just show my jewel right here. It is a From Nothing Diamond for Resolute Technique, but you could just use a normal jewel for this. Over here, these three are on the main skill tree, both of them, because this increased damage every time you've warcried recently boosts your totems. This node here is only in your first weapon set, because the warcry related effects only boost your warcry. Over here you can see I have these three nodes here. Corrupting Cry scales off increased physical damage, and these three totems also scale off increased physical damage, so both gear sets have these three in my passive tree. Over here, these are green. These are only affecting on the weapon set 2, which means they only affect totems and their totem related nodes. I'll talk a little about the Resolute Technique in a second. I'm just going to cover, right here we have increased area of effect. This helps the corpse explosion. The area of it makes it bigger. It also makes your warcry bigger by a reasonably large amount. Over here, again, weapon set 1, warcry related nodes. And then over here, there's more warcry related nodes. These are on weapon set 1. Right here, it's basically the same node as the one at the very top left of the tree, but there's another one here, and there's a bunch of block nodes, and these are only on weapon set 1. And finally, we have increased block chance, which is only on weapon set 1. That basically covers all of weapon set 1. For weapon set 2, I mentioned here, we have totem nodes here. We have this 50% increased attack damage node here. We have these totem nodes here. I am taking the totem placement speed because the increased damage, we have a lot of it already, we don't need more. But the placement speed feels very significant. And over here, we have the same thing here. Placement speed here, and there's one strength node here, as well as these two nodes here. Finally, you'll see that I have these 3 bleed nodes here. I've done the maths on this. It's around 40% chance to bleed on the second slam of Rolling Slam. So it's a relatively nice DPS increase of I think it's 10 to 15%. But that basically covers the weapon sets. Oh, sorry, and there's one more here, the armor break debuff. So it says it increases the effect of fully broken armor, which says that fully broken armor makes them take 20% increased physical damage. So I think that this 30% increased effect would make them take more physical damage, which results in more damage on the boss. This is in the weapon set 2 because of the change to using the armor breaker totem. And that's why we don't need this in weapon set 1 anymore, which it was on before. Finally, I will cover this From Nothing Diamond. It is mainly used for this one life node here. This node that makes totems last a little bit longer. It gives them 2 more seconds on duration. It's just quality of life. And this node here, which makes it so that you recover life when you block. In combination with a corruption on your svalin, which gives life on block, and an extremely high amount of block chance, you basically will survive against any of the small little hits from mobs in your maps. It's just mapping sustain, more or less. But the main aspect for damage that you will see when you change passive tree due to the way Deepest Tower works, it says that enemies in your presence count as being on low life, and you can see here that these nodes here says increased damage with hits against enemies that are on low life. All of these give 30%, which is a lot for a small node, and 60% for a big node, and damage is lucky against enemies with low life, which synergizes very well with Heft support that gives them more maximum. So you increase the maximum damage roll that you can roll, and then you make all your damage lucky, which is good damage. And then you have these 2 nodes here. These are the 2 low life wheels that I was talking about that make this build competitive with the damage from patch 1.0. It is only because of Deepest Crown, which basically nearly doubles or triples your damage against bosses when you're close to them. And these nodes here, as well as these 3 nodes here. This node here gives 120% increased damage, by the way. It is a ridiculous amount of damage. And that's why you see this kind of strange pathing where I'm actually taking this node here on my both weapon sets, even though the totems don't actually get summoned in the first weapon set. And that's only because we need to path up to here to get to there. In terms of stun threshold, you get a tiny bit here, and you get a tiny bit here. and I am using a stun charm. And then I'll also just mention one more thing is the life regen. So previously I would take this note here. This has been removed because our strength is quite low because we dropped our helmet, the strength helmet, the unique helmet that gives a ton of strength. But there is this regen cluster here that is very important. This note here gives regen while moving. These two notes here give regen as well. These are very important notes that you need to take. Otherwise, you will have like very little regen, and it just makes the build a little bit more clunky to play because the totems cost a lot of life. In terms of ascendancy, we are taking Warcrawler's Bellow to make corpses explode. This is for clear again, the Corrupting Cry, Seismic Cry setup. And these are mandatory because you can't clear without Corrupting Cry. There are ways to get around this with pin support. I personally do not think they're worth using. And the two totem nodes here, they don't really seem that significant. The key defensive core of this build is Renly Trainling plus Total Charm. With combination with Svalin, which makes your block lucky, you will end up with a very high amount of block. And again, with the life on block nodes that I talked about, the one here and the corruption on the Svalin, you'll be very tanky in your maps. And you generally will only die to one shots, which is generally how the case goes for most POE2 builds at the moment. These three nodes here are just to get a little bit more strength. But if you buy more expensive maces, you can equip them without having these nodes. You can drop them and grab whatever else you want. Personally, I like to have a little bit more life. I think it's useful. And I will just finally mention that it says I need more strength, right? Like it says, but all my gear is like usable and all my gem slots, except the ones in weapon set 2, are all usable. This is because I have strength requirement on this weapon that's 426, and this weapon has strength on it itself, but I'm not sure if this is a bug or intentional. I can still swap to it, and when I swap to it, I gain the amount of strength required. Sorry, let me just swap again. Yeah, I gain the amount of strength required to use this mace, so it's now usable. And remember, I have one strength node here that gives me a bit more strength. So that allows me to weapon swap. But even though it says there's an error with my character in terms of strength, there actually ends up not being an issue at all. But yeah, this covers the passive skill tree. And for the next section, I'm going to talk about items. Alright, so I'm just going to show my gear and talk a little bit about the important lines. This is my scepter. It has 140 spirit. The amount of spirit it gives is relatively important because it means you can put more aura support gems and more auras on. But the other most important line is that it needs to have a low int requirement. You can see that it only has 62 required int, and that's because of this reduced attribute requirement line. And you want to have increased presence area of effect for the deepest tower setup. That's what the final endgame gear is. I'll talk a bit about deepest tower now that I've mentioned that. Deepest Tower is your primary way of increasing your boss DPS by 2x, 3x damage compared to before. And that's because enemies in your presence are on low life and all these low life nodes on the tree. These ones here and these 3 points here. With those two combined, you gain a lot of increased damage for totems that normally don't have access to good ways to get increased damage. And that results in very high DPS for single target. Deepest Tower has a line here that says reduced presence area of effect. You can see here that I have a corruption that's 45%. You do not need this corruption. I would not recommend you waste your money on this. You want to look for high amounts of life. You can see my life is really bad. You want as much high life as you want, as high chaos rest as you want. This one doesn't matter. The reason why this doesn't matter is because this is reduced area of effect, not less area of effect. And the line on the scepter, if you get 50%, it counteracts that. Basically, I'm not reducing my presence at all. And you can see when I hover over it, it obviously doesn't tell you how many meters it is, but you can see that it's reasonably large. It's around 4 meters or so. That's why this one has a presence area of effect, and you don't need a fraction on this. I just did it because I like to gamble, and it hit. So yeah, just make sure that when you buy your deepest tower helm, you want as high max life roll as possible and as high chaos rest as possible. The presence area of effect does not matter. The reduced light radius, we don't care, and the armor energy shield is so minimal that I personally don't think it matters that much. The next item I'm going to talk about is your key defensive layer, Svalin. In combination with the Warbringer Ascendancy, less block chance, as well as 40% base block from Equipped Shield. That means that my Svalin has 40% base block instead of 26, which you can see right here. And it allows us to get to 65% or 64% like real block. And this block chance is lucky, we'll push that all the way up to 86%. You can see here that the maximum block chance is 64% and the estimated block chance is 86%. The best corruption for this is the life gain when you block. Because you're blocking so much, because you have such a high amount of block chance, this results in you gaining a ton of sustain in your maps against small mobs. And in combination with a resolute technique and hunker down, you're gaining 40 life on block, which ends up being a ton of life on block. It will make it so that you're basically invincible against small mobs hitting you. If you can afford this corrupt, you can just get a standard svalin, you can get a 2-circuit svalin, you can get increased block chance svalin, increased max block svalin. You can basically pick whatever you want, but the life gain on your block is best in slot. The next item I'm going to cover is my amulet. My amulet is attribute modifier, like attribute boosted with catalysts, because I need attributes for all my skill gems that are not red. And this amulet is like pretty bad. The only thing that actually matter on this amulet is melee skill gems, lightning res, and all attributes. You don't actually need all attributes here. You can get it on a ring. But personally, I felt it when I got it on my amulet, it helped me like gear my attributes. Like you see my attributes here. You can see that this companion requires 72 dex. You can see that blasphemy requires 61 int. It's the lowest level blasphemy as well. So that having attributes somewhere on your build, either in your rings or your amulet, helps a lot. The prefixes of this in particular are terrible. You want to have high life prefix, and the base of this is also bad. You want to have a amber base, like a strength base for bested slot. But I kind of just settled with what I can. For anoints, you want to have parrying motion, and I'll show you. I'll put up a clip in a second showing what parrying motion actually does in certain maps. But it gives you a ton of movement speed, and it also gives you increased block chance, which helps you cap your block without having to spend your skill tree nodes on like random block nodes here, like 3 points here. You don't want to spend that. 4 points here. You don't want to spend that. This kind of stuff. You want to save on skill points, especially when you swap over to deepest tower, because of the requirement to get these nodes here and these nodes here. The next item I'm going to talk about is this ring here. This ring here is literally just life, strength, res. That's the only 3 lines that actually matter on your ring. And same applies for this one. This is self-crafted. It is life, strength, res, and it also comes with rarity, which is a nice bonus. But obviously that's optional, and if you can afford it, you can afford it. For your chest piece, you want to have an ornate plate base, because ornate plates give you maximum life per second. The only relevant lines on this chest piece are maximum life, strength, res. You want to have high life and high strength, because this is how you get most of your life. You can see I'm at, 32,000. Take this off, I lose like 300 life. It is a ton of life, and you want this on your chest. You want res here as well, because that helps you fix your reses. For this gloves here, the important lines are life, melee skill gems, and res. If you can afford to get strength on it, you want to get strength on this because it gives you more life, but it's pretty expensive. I personally have just life, I have res, and I have melee skill gems level 2, maximum amount. For my belt, I have 2 charm slots. In particularly, I have max life, I have chaos res, I have strength, and I have life regen. This is how you get some of your life regen, and it helps. And I will just mention that you can get life regen on here. You can get it on a suffix on your gloves. You can get it on your rings, although rings is very full. I would not recommend you get it on your rings because you need strength and res on your rings. See strength and res on my rings. You can get it here, but again, suffixes are full. Melee skill gems, attributes, and lightning res. So generally, belts and gloves are good ways to get like 20 to 30 life regen. And finally, boots, the only important line, well, the key one is the movement speed. You obviously want as high movement speed as you can get. In particular, these boots had life, strength, double res. These are very good boots. Those are the few lines that you care about. Movement speed, max life, strength, res, with a priority of movement speed first, resistance second, and life and strength third, and life fourth. That's how you should prioritize these boots. The reason why you need the strength is so that you can use maces that aren't insanely expensive. And finally, my flask here. You can spend as much money as you want on a flask, but I have one that has increased life recovered and removes 15% of life from mana when used. I'm not using mana because I am playing blood magic, so it really gives me double life regen, which ends up being 2k life on my life flask. And for the mana flask, it doesn't matter, just whatever. For charms, I have a stun charm with guard during effect and reduced charges. The second line doesn't matter. You can have increased charges gained, reduced charges, increased maximum charges, doesn't really matter. And My next one is this Chaos Damage charm. Because my Chaos damage, or my Chaos res is not capped, this charm helps me when I take Chaos damage. I don't think it caps it, but I guess pretty close. But the main thing is the second line that says 50% of Chaos damage prevented during when hit, recoup this life and mana during effect. Because you're blocking it a lot, blocking actually counts as preventing a hit. So if I get hit by Chaos damage, I block it. Sorry, first, if I get hit by Chaos damage, I don't block it, it procs my charm. And then if I get hit by any more Chaos damage during this effect, the Chaos damage prevented by my block, which will be 100% damage prevented, right? Because when I block, I don't take any damage. That gets recouped as life during effect. It's the best charm for Amethyst. You can just run a normal Amethyst charm. This is actually relatively expensive. I think I got this one for 1 or 2 div. So if you can't afford it, just don't bother. And finally, I will cover the weapon swap. So the weapon swap is extremely low strength requirement maces with +7 to all melee skill gems. The base, it helps to get increased stun build up base, like the mace with the base effect, the implicit, but it's not needed. And you want to have 2 alacrity runes. You can see here I have greater rune of alacrity, greater rune of alacrity, and then over here I have the 2 as well. And this gives 16% skill speed on one mace and 16% skill speed on the other. And that results in you getting some more skill speed for your totems. This line here, the elemental damage to attacks does not matter. Again, the only lines that matter are melee skill gems, increased stun build up, which I don't have, and very low strength requirement mace. I'll also show you quickly how you actually look up these maces. Alright, so let me show you how you can actually look up these items in PoE trade. I'll start with the scepter first. So you want to go item category is scepter, you want to go non-unique. The lines you want are presence, area of effect of presence. So I'll go area, presence, this one, increase presence, area of effect. You want 50%, but let's just say you go with 40% instead. And then you want to have a low int requirement. Blasphemy has an int requirement of, I think it is 61. Let me just quickly check. Yep, it's 61. So ideally you want to only get up to 61 int. So you want this to match blasphemy. So you put 61 int as the maximum roll in here. Once that's done, hit search. You can see that this is showing scepters. And then you want to hit this spirit button here to sort by highest to lowest spirit. Or you can add a spirit line here. So let's just say 140. And you can see that there's one on the market. So unfortunately, there's not very many particular scepters that meet this condition. If I go any, so this includes offline players, you can see there's a decent amount on the market with this condition. But you kind of just have to wait for them to come online. If they do come online, and when they do, you ping them for it. If you can't find this kind of scepter, just lower the spirit, and you'll be able to find one. Or you can increase the int requirement by 5, because each passive node on the tree can be swapped for 5 int. And you can probably find one like that. So for example, if I have a look at this, you can see, should go back online, and then sort by spirit. You can see that there are a few on the market that have a higher int requirement, so you need to have 1 extra int point on your tree. And it's like 20x, 1x, 30x, like it's pretty okay, it's not that expensive. This one here is too divine, I just don't buy these guys, right? Don't bother with these people. But yeah, see 20x, pretty cheap, 1x, 30x, and these go down in spirit. I have 140, higher you get the better. If you have less spirit, you just drop warm-blooded support from one of your auras. That'll be like, I think it's minus 15 or minus 20. So you don't actually need that much spirit. So yeah, that's how you look up the scepters. For maces, which are the other important thing, you want to click two-handed mace here. You want to go melee skill gems, and you want to put it to 7. And you want to hit, you want to change the strength requirement here. So for my particular build, when I POB'd it, I had around I think it was 430 strength or so. And when I hit search, it actually shows like a bunch of random, like, what do you call them? Like 221 strength bases. So what you actually need to do is, because of Giant's Blood tripling your strength requirement, you need to pull out a calculator. You need to go whatever your strength is. So in my case, it was 430 divided by 3, which is 143. So I'm just going to put 144. Sorry, I'm going to put 143 because we obviously don't want to go over. And then these will show the maces that have this condition. The next thing you want to do is you want to add in a not filter, because this particular line here. people will have runes in here that convert the requirements to dex or int, and these will show up in your search, and we don't want these. So I'm going to go convert dex. You don't want this. I'm going to go convert int, and you also don't want this. So now that we're filtering those out, we hit search again. You can see the prices of them. This one is probably getting pinged. These are getting spam pinged. But generally, it's around 3 divine is what you're looking for one of these maces. This is for the deepest tower setup. With the deepest tower setup, you want extremely low strength requirement. I would also recommend that you don't look for corrupted ones. Because you can't socket them with artificer orbs, because you want to have 2 runes of alacrity in them. And that's kind of like a good benchmark of how much it will cost you to get a mace to swap to the deepest tower setup. So yeah. 3 to 4 divine. I think I got mine for 4 and 6 divine. 4 and 5 divine. This was like ages ago, like a week ago. But the prices have dropped substantially since then. Since they're like a cheaper, you can actually look for extra mods. So the other one you'd look for is stun builder. Because causes increased stun builder. I think this is the one. Yep. So you can see this one. 40x causes increased stun builder. 30%. Like you can grab one of these maces, which will make the boss stun a bit faster. Again, the other lines don't matter at all. And that's more or less how you look it up. Stun duration, I have tested before in the previous patch. It did not seem to affect heavy stun duration. I'm not sure if it was bugged and doesn't work on totems, and it only works for attacks that you do that stun. So you can see here, this one, for example, 4 divine has the nodes you want, and it has the runes that you want. So you can just grab this one. It's pretty good, and it's lower strength requirement. But yeah, that's more or less how you look up for the 2 most important parts of the build, the weapons and the scepter. I'll also show you quickly how you can look up the svalin corruption. So you go svalin, you go enchant, and you go life gain to when you block, and hit search. You can see this is the maximum block chance is really low. So you want to add a line here that says maximum block chance, and you want it to be minimum of minus. I think I have a minus 11. That's my minimum. You can see here, 20 life on block, 2 divine, 2 divine, 4 divine, 4 divine, whatever. These are 10, minus 10, you can pay more money. I haven't bought them because I'm actually not getting up to the maximum amount of block chance. I don't think it matters much. You get like 1 or 2 extra % of block. It costs you double the amount of divines, so it's personal preference. If these are not showing, you can always just look at the market another day and see the price of it. So you can see this 6 days ago is probably not logging in, 5 days ago probably not logging in, these kind of things. But people come and go based on the time of day, and that's how you would search up svalin. So that should cover how you search up the key kind of parts of the build, the two weapons, the scepter and the svalin. For deepest tower, this is all just common kind of searching stuff. You just go to deepest tower and you just go life, bam. 12 divine, expensive, yes. What I'd recommend is you go down here, you put a filter, you say I'm only willing to pay, let's say 5 divine. And then you click maximum life again. You can see a really good corruption, 3 divine. So that's how you get a lot of life on your helmet. The rest of the gear will just be very standard, like you go like max life, and then you go like whatever res you're looking for. So like lightning res, whatever cold res, etc. You type in the base, so ornate plate for chest piece. Hit search, and you can see like max life, hit filter, 1 divine, 50x. 50x. Oh, sorry. You want to have strength as well. Put strength on as well. Strength you probably want to have like 30, right? Do the same thing. You can see like pretty good amounts of life, reasonably cost for these 2, and then it ramps up ridiculously because you're looking for strength and the high amount of life. Again, you go like I only have 4 divines to pay or whatever, right? And then sort by max life again. You can find some pretty cheap gear like this, and you obviously do want a good like high implicit regen. So you can always just keep looking until you find one that's high. It seems like most of these aren't very like high up there, but like for example this one here, 3 divine for 2 point, basically a perfect roll is really good. The corruption is kind of useless. The life is like a bit lower than mine, but it's still pretty good, and it has a large amount of armor. You can see this one has like double the amount of armor my chest piece has. So there's lots of room for improvement on the gear I'm currently wearing, but I have not really felt the need to invest in this build anymore because it does all content without any issues. And just to give you an idea of the budget of the build, I'm just going to look through all the items that I have and just show you the prices at this current time of recording. So for the Scepter, I have increased presence of effect, 66 int, 140 spirit. You can see that the price of it is like 1x, 20x, 80x. There's only a few in the market, and ideally you want one with the purity. But it's looking around, let's just say 20 to 40x. If you can't find one, just wait another time of the day and try and look for one again, or increase the int, lower the spirit, change the spirit, or change the presence area of effect. The next one is the svalin. I showed this one before, but life on block with minus 11%, 2 divine is probably around the cost of this. If you don't want life on block, it will be basically like 10x. So before you can afford the 2 divine one, go for one like this. On nameplate, these are my conditions. I have 200 life, I have 30 strength, I have 20 lightning res, I have fire res. Any amount is good. Price, 10x, 30x. They're still in the market. If you change some of the resistances, the price will drop a lot. But you should be able to find a suitable chest piece with some res on it, like this one here, 20 res, or this one here, 40 res, for a relatively cheap cost because it's not an 8 plate, it's armor base. For gloves, I'll show you how I look them up. You just go melee skill gems, 2, we go life, 100, and then we just go whatever res, say fire res, say 30, and you want to make sure that evasion is no, so evasion here you want to put max to 0, and then send it. So it looks like it's pretty cheap, 5, 15, 20, 40, 50, very cheap in terms of gloves. You want to make it more expensive, you get strength. That should increase the price by a lot. But my gloves don't have strength. See, 15 divine, 18 divine. Don't bother with strength, it's too expensive. Just get this. For boots, I personally bought my boots for 2 divine. But I haven't checked the prices recently, so I'll just do that now. So what we want is we want move speed at 35%, we want life, just say 100, we want strength, just say 28. We want evasion to be 0, and we want 2 res. So just say we want like fire res, and we want lightning res. Just an example, you can put any of the 2 reses you want here. No results found. Okay, let's lower this. Let's lower some of the conditions. So let's just say 50 life, let's say 28 strength. Have a search. Okay, they appeared. They're 5 divine. These are very similar to the boots I have, so I'd say they're pretty expensive. But the easiest way to cheapen this is you just lower the movement speed to 25. Okay, look, it's dirt cheap. And now that it's dirt cheap, you can increase the life to 100 again. Still like 15x, whatever, 1 divine. And then if you want to try, go 30 movement speed instead. 15x, 40, whatever. This is probably like pretty good. 22 divine, 3 divine. What I recommend is you just try and snipe one of these low ones using the life search button here. You go here, you go, I'm only willing to pay, just say, I'm only willing to pay exalted orbs, search, life search. And then whenever they pop up, they will ping you and you just ping the guy to buy it from them. For the amulet, over here we want to turn it to amulet, melee skill gems, we want 3, we want attributes, we want, oh that's the wrong one, attributes, we want say like 22 is what I have, we want a res, 5 res, whatever, any res is fine, send it, none in the market, too conditional, take off the res, see if it comes up. Okay, look, taking off the res does come up, 50x, 2 divine, 3 divine, 3 divine. This one has res on it. 4 divine, no res, no res, no res. So if you want a +3 amulet, looks like it's going to be about 3 divine for one with res. If you want to cheapen it, lower the melee skill gems to 2. Very cheap. And then you can put on a res or whatever. Amulets are pretty like, it's like 1 divine. But at this point, you might as well pay like 2 divine for a better one, like one with +3, so you don't have to ever swap it again. Don't get one that's corrupted because you want to anoint it, so do not get one that's corrupted. Over here, corruption off, and your anoint will be parrying, what is it called, parrying motion. So this one's good. 2 melee skill gems with fire res. If you increase, there's none on the market because there's none with fire res in particular. But yeah, you can just scroll or life search. For the rings, only thing you want is life, strength, and resistances. So in my particular, I had all elemental res, and then I had like cold res. Right, this is what I had for my rings. Search. Sorry, I need to set this to rings here, and I need to increase the amount of life that we get. So let's just say we want 10 here, we want 30 here, we want 100 here. Just say 60 because I have one that has 60. I'll send it. See, this is like pretty eh. It's a lot of res, decent in res. Filtered by cold res. 50x, that's very good. 5 divine, 2x, very good. What I recommend again is you go here, you click exalted only. Sort by res. This would be the highest amount of res for the cheapest amount of currency in terms of results. So it looks like it's around a divine, but you can pay more for premium. So if you want more life, you pay more. That's how you search up for both of your rings. You will swap this one over to like what lightning res or whatever other res you need to fix your ring, and the same process will occur. So like for example, that previous one, this one right here, is really good. It's got 50 lightning res, it's got life strength resistance. You can catalyst it with the lightning resistance one. It gives you a ton of lightning res. That's how you search up the rings. And for the belt, I have life on my belt. I have strength on my belt. I have regen on my belt. And then I have chaos res on my belt. And then I went with like 100 here. I went with like 28 here. Let's just go 15 here and go 18 here. And we just switch this over the belt. Send this one. You can see one divine. Like that's probably like what you're looking for. One divine also for a belt. Again, if you want to make this cheaper, take off lightning, life regen. 20x, 20x, 20x. It cheapens down a lot. If you want to make it even more cheaper, just take off chaos res and put on another res, like fire res or cold res. It should drop in price again. You also probably want to look for one that has more than one charm slot. So these are like the old belts. You want to look for one that has like this, 2 charm slots. That will help you with having more charms. For the final, for the jewels, you want, over here you want any jewel. You want ruby jewel. That's not coming up. Anyways, you want increased warcry damage. So increased damage with warcries. You want block chance. And the other ones are kind of just like personal preference, but these are the main ones. So block chance, you actually want 7 because that allows you to cap your block. If I just search this up, I think something is up with the filter. Let me just check. Oh, it's the other increased block chance. For some reason, there's like 2 of them, so the second one should work. Yep, there we go. So very, very cheap. Filter for maximum amount of warcry damage, 20x, 5x. Buy the cheap ones, don't buy the expensive ones. Weapon swap speed is a good modifier. Totem placement speed is a good modifier. Knockback is not good. Valor is not good. Cooldown is useless. Build up is good. Warcry speed is good. Ignite is useless. Placement speed is good. You know, just look through what you think is reasonable. What I recommend is you just go here, you swap to Exalt again, and you sort by warcries, and you just scroll. Life regen is also good if you can get that on. I think it's like a percentage life regen. This one here. See if it comes up. Yep, you can also grab one of these. These are also good. Increased damage warcry, say you want 15% or more. This is how you're going to search for these jewels. That's expensive, so I wouldn't want 15% or more. I would want a cheaper one because I don't want to spend that much money on a jewel. So it looks like it's about 430, 50x for a jewel with life regen. If you drop life regen, it's way, 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 way cheaper. And finally, from Nothing Diamond, we want Resolute Technique. This is for the super end game. And hit search. And it's like 10x, 10 chaos, sorry. So that's like what? I think that's like a third of a divine. Sorry, no, it's about a divine. 15 is a divine. So, you don't really need this early. This is like a final kind of min-maxing kind of angle if you want to buy this to finish the build. But yeah, that should cover the budget of the build. I think it's relatively reasonable for this amount of damage and this amount of kind of content. Like you can do most content except Sims. Sims you need to do specific swaps. And I'll leave that for Skadoosh's video. You can check that out in the description. But yeah, that should cover the budget for the build. I'll be covering the 3 key stages of progression for this build and how you go about doing it. So first, I'm just going to remind everyone that there's a loadout section. I have that all set up. The 3 key progressions are noticed here. The first one is like the before svalin, so level 80. The post 4th ascendancy, that's when you get total charm. So that's this node right here. The part where you get to svalin, that's the second stage of progression. And then the final part is the deepest tower swap. So for the initial swap, this is what I had. I have all the POBs in here. This is my character at that moment in time. I snapshot of it. But the way you swap, the way you level is you play the perfect strike setup that most of the speedrunning warriors are playing. You level to around Act 5. You need to make sure that you have 2 ascendancy points here. And you need to make sure that you have unlocked Ancestral Warrior Totem. So this gem right here. It's one of the later gems. You can see here I have a 4 link right here, but I have these 2 unticked. So this is the priority that you want to have for your skill gems. And same applies here. On League Start, obviously, you won't have some of these nodes. So you can drop like Font of Blood, and you can drop like the stuff. You basically have to kind of make do. Once you've leveled, I'll highlight that the post 4th ascendancy moment and the pre 4th ascendancy moment. So on this level 80 setup, I don't have my 4th ascendancy. It is dangerous. You will die to AoEs because you can't block AoEs, right? I might have 75% block, but since it doesn't affect AoEs, you'll still randomly get popped if you stand on them. So just be careful about that. You notice that I have plus 12% overcap on block. And the reason why I have so much overcap is because this is the snapshot of my character before I went to do the 4th ascendancy. So right here is the 4th ascendancy bar. This is where you get total charm. You'll be noticeably tankier in maps, but obviously you won't be invincible. And the way you get invincible is the the second key stage of progression, which is buying svalin. So level 86 post svalin, you can see that I bought a standard svalin here with no corruption. And this basically boosts my block chance to 87% from 70. And it basically makes you invincible in maps. You will only die to one-shots or when you're placing totems, as I showed before. I will highlight that before you swap to Deepest Tower or your gear, you should be using this unique helmet here because this gives you a ton of strength. The reason why you need a high amount of strength is because of the maces having very high amounts of strength requirement. And that's because of Giant's Blood here that triples the strength requirement of these weapons. But that basically covers the pre-Deepest Tower progression. This is easily enough to do tier 15s. It's easy enough to do, I think, up to tier 3 Olroth. But I think I did tier 4 as well, but it will take some time. You're not going to be one-shotting the boss. But if you want to triple your damage or double your damage, you want to swap to the Deepest Tower setup. So this swap, I will just highlight, is a pretty hard swap to do. You need to make sure it's planned out before you do it. And the reason why is because you lose a ton of strength because you're swapping your helmet from the strength unique, the one that gives you increased strength, to Deepest Tower. This results in dropping a ton of strength. Furthermore, you are swapping, for example, these strength nodes, I've dropped like these nodes here, and you're dropping a bunch of these attribute nodes here. And the reason why is so that you can get points to path over to the low life damage and the low life damage here. What I would recommend is you, for example, if I'm on this setup right here, I would import my character. So I'm just going to copy this particular example, right? So we're just going to copy, we're just going to go call this test, swap to it. So this is my character. I want to swap over to the Deepest Tower setup. So I'm going to go to the Deepest Tower setup. So I'm going to just hit compare on it. You can see this is the points I should be taking, these are the points I should be dropping. I'm going to start dropping them. We're going to drop this, we're going to drop this. We're going to drop this. We can keep that actually. And then we're going to drop this. So ideally you want to drop the strength nodes here like this. And then you want to drop this. And then you want to take all these nodes here. So I'm just going to click these like this. Like that. And then you want to path straight up to the center. So I'm going to drop all of these. I'm going to set these all on my weapon set, the correct weapon set. So we're just going to click this, that, and then on my weapon set 2, I'm going to be clicking this. Either way, it doesn't matter if it's up or down. So, and we'll drop these life nodes here. So, now that I've put off the compare, you can see that my strength has dropped to 450. I think I'm on, yep, that's my strength right now. So you will need to make sure that when you buy maces, you set the strength requirement in the PoE search bar so that it is 1/3 of 450. So just get a calculator, 450 divided by 3, and then that's your strength requirement. You want to make sure that this is planned out very carefully, because if you buy maces that strength requirements are too high, then it will be kind of expensive, like you won't be able to put them on. What I recommend is if you're level 90 and you're not level 91, you can always just drop this node here. Like that would put you to level 90. So this is probably what I would recommend for the level 90 deepest tower setup. And if you just have a look, what do I have extra? I have 3 points here. And I have 1 extra strength node here. And I have the armor break on the second weapon swap, which you can still put in already, right? Like you can already have that, so that's not an issue at all. So that's how you transition from the svalin setup with Black Sun Crest helmet to the deepest tower setup, where your helmet is swapped and your weapons need to be upgraded. Like they need to have low strength requirements, so that you can actually set up this, and then so you can do more damage. If you're level 90, I will leave this tree in the POB actually. This will be your level 90 tree, and then when you level up, you grab the From Nothing Diamond, and you grab some of these life nodes here, and some of these nodes here, and especially this Hunker Down node here. And finally, I just want to talk about how you can min-max this build to its absolute limits, which I even haven't done, and that's mainly through 2 ways. One is that you want to get a level 21 Ancestral Warrior Totem, and this will allow it to gain even more damage, because you'll cap the totem level. You see plus 19 in brackets with the blue text. When I put this to 21, it will cap it at plus 40, which is the maximum for skill gems. Because it's a base of 21, this will allow you to min-max the damage on this. But this is extremely expensive because you need to have a 6 link with quality, and then you need to actually hit the corrupt. If you are chasing this, I recommend you either buy it or you hit it with a Omen of Corruption and pray. I will also just quickly note that Rolling Slam doesn't need to be qualityed and doesn't need to have sockets. You just need to make a Rolling Slam gem, hit it with a Vow Orb, and then level it up to level 20 if it gets the +1 corruption applied to it. Makes it very cheap to get a 21 for Rolling Slam, and that's what I recommend you do to increase your damage a bit more. The next part is in terms of the maces. So my current maces, it's kind of hard to show this on POB, but I have 2 sockets for runes, and then I have 8% of increased skill speed in 2 of them. If you wanted to min-max this build to its absolute limit, you would hit this with a corruption, get 3 sockets, and then you'd be able to put in an extra skill speed. So you would have 24% increased skill speed per weapon. So that would give you an extra 16% skill speed compared to what I have right now. Those are the 2 more ways that you can min-max this build. But I also wanted to just cover over alternate ways to build based on kind of what you personally prefer. What I mean by that is, for example, trading damage for tankiness. So in this test, I made an item set called Test. There is a chest piece called Kaom's Heart. This thing gives you 1,000 life, which is a lot of life, but it says you have no spirit. When I put this on, I go to 4,000 life. But the no spirit line is extremely detrimental, like for your single target damage, because of the use of the companion. Since the companion is applying shock on the mobs, you will lose the 40% or 30% increased shock effect, which makes them take more damage. Previously, the solution for this is the use of Ball Lightning and Lightning Warp, but I believe they have changed text on Lightning Warp. It says, if targeting an enemy, the explosion creates a shocked ground. So you need to actually target the enemy and destroy it for the shocked ground to appear. If I'm not mistaken, previously you could just do it on a Ball Lightning and it would apply shocked ground, but I'm not 100% sure if this still works in this patch. If this still works, you can use it to gain 20%, I think 20% shock effect. If this doesn't work, you're losing 30 to 43% shock effect on the bosses when you're killing them from your companion. Furthermore, you also lose Berserk, which ends up being, it says 60% increased rage effect. At 30 rage, it's around 16, 17 more like rage, if that makes sense. Since all of them are getting boosted by 60%, which means that you're losing around 15% to 16% more attack damage. So that's like an option if you want to lower your attack damage, your bossing damage, but gain 1,000 more life from Kaom's Heart. The final option is the use of an amulet called the Defiance of Destiny amulet. This amulet says you recover 10% of missing life before you're hit by an enemy, giving you massive sustain when you're getting hit by multiple small hits. It also gives you increased life and strength, which are all good to have. And you have to fix your reses by using something else, like a better rare or something. But the main reason why I do not like this amulet very much is because you're losing +3 melee skill gems. +3 melee skill gems double dips with your setup. When I mean double dip, I mean it boosts 2 parts of it. So the main thing is the Ancestral Warrior Totem is a melee tagged totem, and the Rolling Slam is also a melee tagged totem. If I take off this amulet and I put on Defiance of Destiny, my Ancestral Warrior Totem goes down in damage, and my Rolling Slam also goes down in damage. From the calculations that I've done, I think you lose around 20% damage on Rolling Slam, and you lose around 10 to 15% damage on the Ancestral Warrior Totem. And this can be compensated with the use of a Prism of Belief Diamond. You want to get a Prism of Belief Diamond with +3 Ancestral Warrior Totem gems or +3 Rolling Slam level, like the gem itself. So that will help you compensate a bit, but you're still losing, I think, around 10 to 20% damage if you use this amulet. And you're gaining some life from, recover life before you get hit by an enemy. And not to mention, you're actually not even recovering that much life because you only have 3,500 life. So I personally I think the Kaom's heart setup is decent but you lose damage on bosses. The Defiance of Destiny is you gain a bit. I don't think you gain enough for me to personally think it's worth using. But yeah, you can use it if you would like to be super tanky. And if you want to be extremely tanky, you can just run both, right? You get 4,300 life, you recover 4,000 life every time 400 life every time you take damage. This will make you extremely tanky. But again, you're losing shock effect, which is 30 to 40% increased damage taken by the mob, which is equivalent to like 30% more damage. And you're also losing melee skill gems. So you need to buy an extremely expensive Prism of Belief to compensate for the damage. And even if you buy one, it will still, you'll still be doing less damage than if you weren't doing the setup. So for my personal preference, I like to do more damage against bosses because I like to one-shot them or get as close to one-shotting them as possible. So personally, I have not done these setup, but I have seen these setups being used and they seem pretty decent, but you're just losing out on single target damage. So yeah, as a final conclusion to this build, I really appreciate your time in watching this video, whether you skipped to the sections or skipped to the end, or just check the sections you're interested in. It doesn't really matter to me. But I wanted to make a video that encompassed everything I learned from this build from league start to where I've taken it to, so endgame pinnacles. It's funny because totems got nerfed by 60% based on their raw numbers on the actual gems itself, but with the new tools such as the Companion for Shock and the increased fizz damage from Armor Break as well as Deepest Tower, I think this build actually ends up doing more damage than it would have done in the previous patch. Oh, and before I conclude the video, I just want to address the most important question that I get asked the most often, is why not Earthshatter on totems? You can see in the background, there's some footage of me killing a map boss with Earthshatter, and then in a second here, I actually end up swapping over to the Rolling Slam setup. So right here, I'm swapping gems, I'm taking an Earthshatter and Upheaval, and I'm putting in Rolling Slam and Conk Effect. And you can see that the boss takes like way more damage. I don't know what it is about Earthshatter, something up with the way the skill actually works. But on paper, it should do pretty reasonable damage, but it seems to be a lot less than the Rolling Slam setup. That's why I'm playing Rolling Slam totems. So yeah, I'll be concluding my personal playtime with this build. I hope this guide can serve as a useful resource in helping you with your own builds, especially if you're playing this build as well. But yeah, I'll be off to play something new. I'm probably a Flicker Strike Gemling. And yeah, if you're interested in seeing more content, like, subscribe, comment, and if you have any questions, just leave them below. Thanks for watching.